Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for joining me once again on one of these Magic the Gathering openings. This time around, because we had gotten through all of the Edge of Eternities collector boosters that we had gotten, I thought it might be time to just go through and actually look out the commander decks there. And I guess in some ways you could think of these as somewhat special, mostly because surprisingly the Spider-Man and the Avatar The Last Airbender sets that were revealed were also mentioned to not be having any commander decks there, which is a bit surprising there. I would have thought that they would have tried to go along with that there as well. I mean, I really like Commander. It's my favorite format, as with, I'm sure it is with a lot of people there, but to not even have any decks based off of it there is a bit surprising, especially when they've kind of gone a little bit more in depth for things like the Final Fantasy, Doctor Who, and whatnot there. But I guess, you know, the Doctor Who and Fallout and Warhammer, they didn't really have sets based off of them there. I mean, you did have collector boosters for the Fallout and the Doctor Who, but they didn't add any new cards. It was just, oh, you know, here are alternate designs for them, whereas Final Fantasy was a whole set. So maybe the idea is just for once a year that they would only put out one set of Universes Beyond commander decks there. That's the only thing I could think of, because I'm not sure if I mean, I think that they were all in different parts of the year. Maybe. I'm not too sure. I'm just taking a random guess about that here. But who knows? Maybe that's what it's going to be. So we'll take a look at these. Okay, so starting off, we've got this counterintelligence, just guy colors there, and based off of everything it looks like, with it saying boost artifacts and proliferate counters, I'm imagining that it's going to deal a lot more with artifact creatures there. And I really enjoy this, just the whole bunch of binary. If I knew ahead of time there what I was going to be coming across, maybe I might have been able to see what that translates out to, but I guess it'll just be a little Easter egg until I'd be able to. Who knows, maybe I'll take a look to see what that means, and I'll put it somewhere on the screen here. But, yeah, okay, so looks like it's going to come in with a couple of counters that you can get there in this. Oh, see where they got the little magnetic strip in the very back here to make it so that people don't, you know, steal the product there. But we've got our inlay, we've got the deck, we've got some information about it there. I'm assuming for someone that's relatively on the newer side, got a little extra deck box there. Get those off to the side, because these are the two things that are going to be of most interest there for us. We've got our full deck there, as well as our little sample pack here, which we're just gonna open up real quick there. It shouldn't be more than, like, generally there's 2 cards in them there. So, yep, just a little bit of this and a little bit of Possibility Technician. Now, I'm not sure if I've even seen this for the openings there, but it's got some really nice artwork there. 2 and a red, 3/3 Kavu Artificer. Whenever this creature or another Kavu you control ETBs, exile top card of your library for as long as that card remains exiled. You may play it if you control a Kavu, and then warp 1 and red. Okay. I kind of dig that there, because it's just, oh, you know, it definitely makes like a Kavu tribal around this particular card, and, you know, just being able to be like, oh yeah, you know, I've got that exiled card, and it says that you can play it as long as it remains exiled, not you can play it until your next turn or the end of the next turn there, or anything like that. So you basically can warp this out for the 1 in the red, and then get this set aside, and then yeah, when you bring this back for its regular cost, probably on the next turn, you get another card that you're like, yeah, I can play this in the future there as well. All you need is just another Kavu. Seems pretty easy if you run a Kavu deck. And a Systems Override there. We had this one before there. Gain control of target artifact or creature until end of turn. You untap it, it gains haste. If it's a spacecraft, you put 10 charge counters on it. And if you do, you remove 10 charge counters from at the beginning of the next end step there. So again, you can do this on your own stuff there if you want a certain spacecraft to get 10 charge counters on it, or you can steal one of your opponent's things, like kind of like the normal thing of it would be. But those are different things that you're able to do with it. But let's get right on in to the deck here. Why am I trying to open it from the top when it's got one of these tabs that I can open it up with here? There we go. Very much easier than trying to rip off the top. Okay, so what have we got here? Starting off, we've got this little In-Spirit flagship vessel, blue, red, and white for a 5/5 legendary artifact spaceship. It's got stations, so you can tap creatures there to put their power onto the spacecraft in the form of charge counters there, and Olin can do it as a sorcery there, so that's a big thing about it. But the big thing is because it's an ability of this and not an ability of a creature. When you put the creature in, even if they don't have haste, you can tap the creature to put the charge counters on this because it's not on the actual creature effect there. But at 1+ charge counter, so pretty easy to get it. You just need to have a 1 power creature or more to get this. Beginning of combat in your turn, you put your choice of a +1/+1 counter or 2 charge counters on up to 1 other target artifact. So you cannot try to fuel this one here. But if you've got another spacecraft there, you could put it on there. Or if you've got another artifact that wants you to put extra charge counters on it, you could put those on there, make one of your creatures slightly bigger. And at 8+ charge counters on this, it becomes a 5/5 flare that gives all other artifacts hexproof and indestructible. That's not too shabby either. I mean, yeah, giving everything else hexproof and indestructible, if you just have a way to give this it as well, I mean, hey, all of your artifacts do that there. And I'm assuming most of these are going to be artifacts. Blue, red, and white, Kilo Apogee Mind, 3/3 legendary artifact creature robot artificer. It has haste, and whenever it becomes tapped, you proliferate. Very, very nice there. Just putting an extra one of those counters on whatever you want. So if you've already got charge counters on places and you attack with this, or you use it to station there, you're able to put an extra charge counter or +1/+1 counter on stuff there. So it goes along with the charge counters and +1/+1s of our spacecraft there. Now we are probably going to see a few of these that we recognize from some of the openings that we did, like this one, Patrolling Peacemaker. 2 and a white, 0/0, artifact creature robot soldier, gets 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and whenever an opponent commits a crime, you proliferate there. So whenever they target an opponent there, anything in their graveyard, or something that they can, if they target an opponent, anything they control or their graveyard there, then you get the trigger there. We had gotten one of them before, so, just an interesting little one there to kind of keep yourself not necessarily safe, because it's also targeting any of your other opponents that exclude you and that player if you're in Commander. Inside Engine, got a couple of these before, 2 and a blue artifact. 2 in tap, you can put a charge counter on this artifact and draw a card for each charge counter on it. So if you're proliferating and you're putting a bunch of charge counters on this already, then when you do come around and tap this, you might be drawing a few extra cards than you originally intended, which is always a good thing. And I guess one of the other things I do like about it is it keeps on scaling, where if they don't deal with this artifact, then you're paying 2 to increasingly draw more and more and more cards. You don't need the proliferating aspect of this. It just automatically is putting more on there, which I think makes it a pretty good effect there. I mean, always drawing is good. Uthros, Research Craft. I'm not sure if we had this one here. 2 and a blue, artifact spacecraft with station at 3+ charge counters. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you draw a card, and then you put a charge counter on this. Okay, so it can help fuel itself there. And at 12+ charge counters, it becomes an 08 flyer that gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control there. So kind of doing a little bit of the be more powerful, kind of like a Tolarian Academy would be there. You know, nifty little one there. Got a little bit of Depth Shaker Titan. 5 and double red for a 5/5 artifact creature robot. When this enters, any number of target non-creature artifacts you control become 3/3s. You sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step, and each artifact creature you control has melee, trample, and haste. So it's kind of nice to have things that are a bit more powerful, that can trample over things and have haste there. I mean, because it says each and it doesn't say each other, it gives itself all of those keywords there as well. Obviously, it gives all of those 3/3s, but having to sack them at the beginning of the next end step kind of feels a little bit bad there. So, you know, you got to be careful. You don't want to do that in your mana rocks. If you've got a lot of, I don't know, lander tokens, then maybe you could do it for that, or clues or anything like that. Long Range Scout, another one that we had gotten there before. 2 and a red artifact. Whenever you attack a player, put a charge counter on this artifact, and for 1 mana, you can remove 2 charge counters from this artifact to discover 4. Activate only as sorcery, which since recording, I had looked up what discover meant and saw it here of you exile cards from the top of your library till you exile non-land with mana value 4 or less, and then you cast it without paying its mana cost, or you can put it in your hand there. The rest go onto the bottom of your library in a random order there, but, you know, being able to get that consistently is very nice. And it's whenever you attack a player there, so if you, let's see here, I'm trying to think. It's whenever you attack a player, so I'm trying to think if it's you get 1 counter for each player, or if it's for each creature that you have attacking. Because, you know, you just gotta attack at least 2 different players if it's just the 1 per player, and then you just get to essentially play something for 1 mana, which is very, very good there. I wasn't realizing how good this was until I saw what Discover meant there. So I'm glad to get some extra one of these, because I think that there are plenty of places that you could put this to improve some decks there. Moxite Refinery, 2 mana for an artifact. We've seen this one there before as well. 2 and tap this to remove X counters from an artifact or creature you control. Choose one. You activate this only as a sorcery. You can either put X charge counters on target artifact or X +1/+1 counters on target creature. So moving stuff around there, but you know, the main thing that you would want to have this done is if you have something that improves the number of counters on things. So, you know, if you've got something like Hardened Scales or Doubling Season, something like that. Unfortunately, this doesn't have green in it, so it cannot take advantage of those. So, you know, that's sort of one of the limitations of this. But, you know, I'm sure that it's good with this of, you know, if you've got a way where you're proliferating, you might have some extra counters on something that you might want to move on to something else. So that's a thought there. I mean, if you don't have extra charge counters, then, you know, you could take off the extra counters that you don't need and put them as 1/1s on something else. You know, it's an idea. Solar Array, I think this one's new. I don't recognize this. 3 colorless for an artifact. Tap it to add 1 mana of any color. When you next cast an artifact spell this turn, that spell gains Sunburst. If it's a creature, enters with +1/+1s on an equal number of mana cast. Otherwise, it enters with that many charge counters on it. That's actually pretty good. I mean, yeah, because getting some extra charge counters or +1/+1s on them there, essentially potentially getting up to 3 extra +1/+1s or charge counters on something. You know, having a way to untap this there with something like Voltaic Key or something like that to be able to use it multiple times to give them Sunburst, that's pretty decent. I might have to look at getting a few more of those there for any artifact deck. I mean, it does get better with the number of colors that there are. So, you know, probably 3 is about where you want to do it. 2 is, might not be exactly where you want to do it. I mean, if it's on, I guess it's based off of colors that you use on it there. So even if this was something that you used it on, as long as you use colors and not colorless, you could get up to 3 +1/+1s on it. Surge Conductor, 3/2. I believe we had gotten this one as well. Artifact Creature Robot. Whenever another non-token artifact you control enters, you proliferate. More proliferation, pretty good there. Certainly we'll take that. And they made some new lands for these as well. Glittering Massif, a land that has the types of forest and plains that can tap for red or white, enters tapped, has a little bit of cycling in case you need something else, drawing another card. And Radiant Summit, a mountain plain that enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. So, you know, it's always nice getting some new lands that have these ways of untapping or keeping them untapped there. So certainly we'll take extra lands. And we're going to be getting into kind of more of the, I wouldn't exactly say generic cards, but the reprints there. So we've got Swan Song to counter things there. Chaos Warp for a little bit of removal. Cloud Key, let's see here. Enters, choose artifact, creature, enchantment, instant, or sorcery. They cost 1 less. So cost reduction, that's nice. Gavel of the Righteous, I don't think I recognize this one here. 2 mana, artifact, equipment, beginning of combat on your turn, put a charge counter on this. Equip the creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on this. As long as this equipment has 4 or more counters on it, equipped creature has double strike there. Equipped, pay 3 or remove a counter from this equipment there. That's not too bad there. I mean, especially if you're proliferating and you're getting stuff up, you can get it up really high and get that double strike. That seems like a pretty good one there. Battlefield Forge, you know, a land that gives you different mana there. Angel of the Ruins there. Enters, exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. I mean, it's a big flyer there, but you also have the opportunity of doing a little bit of removal. Fumigate, destroy all creatures, you know, mass board wipe there. You gain a life for each creature destroyed. Organic Extinction, 8 and double white for sorcery with improvise. So you can tap artifacts to help pay it down by 1 for each one that you tap. Destroy all non-artifact creatures. Ooh, so yeah, that's a bit of a more one-sided board wipe in this case. Resourceful Defense, this is from Capenna, I would think. 2 and a white enchantment. Whenever a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, it has counters on it. Put those counters on target permanent you control, so you always keep the counters. 4 and a white, move any number of counters from target permanent you control to another target permanent you control. That's pretty nice as well. Yeah, you know, a very good one there based with stuff solely based off of counters there. Chrome Host's Seed Shark there. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that mana value there. So you get a bunch of incubator tokens on them there. So I guess you could turn those tokens into, with the that deep shaker robot there to make them, if you want to, there, you know, getting a bunch of extra creatures, extra artifacts come in. I mean, you'd have to, it's non-token artifact that a lot of these based off of there, but they do come in with X +1/+1 counters, and you could potentially just move those around however you want to with like the Moxite Refinery, or if you sacrifice them and you've got that resourceful defense on there, they get to move wherever you want them to. It's not too bad. Cyberdrive Awakener from Kamigawa. Yeah, Kamigawa there. Flying, other artifacts you control have, other artifact creatures you control have flying. That's always nice. When it enters, each non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature until end turn. So kind of like that Deep Shaker one there, except, you know, they don't get sacrificed. Deep Glow Skate, double the number of each kind of counter on any number of target permanents there. So, you know, big duplication effect. Emery to help bring back artifact cards there, because she enters, you mill 4, but you can tap her to choose target artifact in your graveyard to cast. It's always nice. Kappa Cannoneer, another really good one there. You can improvise it to help make it cost very a lot less. It's got ward 4, so it's hard to remove. Whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, you put a +1/+1 on him, and then it can't be blocked. So you're always putting in probably another artifact over and over and over again, so then it's like, okay, I swing in for unblockable, I swing in for unblockable, I swing in for unblockable. Phyrexian Metalmorph, artifact creature that can ETB as a copy of any artifact or creature. It's always nice there, you know, being able to do that. Pull from Tomorrow, being able to draw a bunch of extra cards there. You know, you discard one card, but oh well, if you're drawing like 5, 6, 7 cards, what is one card? Ripples of Potential, 1 in blue, instant Proliferate, then choose any number of permanents you control that had a counter put on them this way. Those permanents phase out there, so yeah, so you can proliferate, and then you can essentially save some of your stuff there. That's always nice. Oh, Tekuthal, Inquiry Dominus. This is one of those big, like, core Dominuses from the Phyrexia All Will Be One. 2, and I'm not even sure if I had this one. 2 in double blue for a 3/5 legendary Phyrexian Horror with flying. If you would proliferate twice instead. That's very nice there. Getting 2 extra counters instead of 1. And then 1 and 2 Phyrexian blue mana to remove 3 counters from among other artifact creatures and or planeswalkers you can control to put an indestructible counter on this. Oh my. Because here's the thing. This gets an indestructible counter on it. And then if you proliferate and it gets more of them, you could potentially be moving those indestructible counters onto other things. That's kind of nasty with that sort of strategy. Thought Monitor, this is another really good one there. Looks like it's very expensive, but it's got Affinity Artifact, so you're probably going to be playing it for 1 blue. But it starts off as a 6 and a blue for a 2/2 artifact creature construct. It's got that affinity for artifacts. It's got flying. When it ETBs, you draw 2 cards. Very, very nice there. If you've got a way to flicker it out, you can potentially be drawing more. Universal Surveillance, X and 3 blue for a sorcery with Improvise again, and you draw X cards. Again, tap down a whole bunch of artifacts that you have that you don't necessarily need to be using to help draw a bunch of extra cards. That's nice. Chain Reaction deals X damage to each creature, X's number of creatures on the battlefield there, so a bit of a board wipe for that one. I don't recognize this one. Alibo, Ancient Witness, 3, a red and a white. This looks like it might come from maybe the Strixhaven decks, which I never ended up, when I took a break, and when I came back, it was around the time that Strixhaven was coming out, but I didn't end up getting any of the Commander decks. I have since gotten them. I just haven't opened them up yet, so maybe I'll review over them on kind of a segment that I'd like to do of like retro Commander decks that I never ended up getting, just to see how they might be in current day or if I might want to make them. But I'm assuming that this is probably one of the, like maybe one of the commanders for the red-white deck there. I don't remember what all of the dragons were called there, but I do remember there was a red-white one, and I see those pillars in the background that look like they're from Strixhaven. So Alibo, Ancient Witness, 3 red and white for a 4/5 legendary artifact creature golem. Other artifact creatures you control have haste. That's always nice. Whenever one or more artifact creatures you control attack, Elbow deals X damage to any target and you scry X, where X is the number of tapped artifacts you control. I mean, you know, that goes in good for attacking there, but it could also just be, you know, you've used them for improvise or station, or you've tapped them for mana there, potentially dealing a whole bunch of stuff to any target and then scrying X just because you attacked with one artifact creature there and you've got like 10 other tap down for other reasons. That's pretty good. I would say that probably if they don't have them in here, having the artifact lands, whether they be the regular ones from Mirrodin there that are the different colors, or I mean, you've also got Dark Steel Citadel as well, but then you also have the two colored ones from, I think it was Modern Horizons 2 maybe. It was either 2 or 3, but I think it was from 2. You know, that also helps out. Having artifact lands definitely helps. I could see this doing a whole bunch. I mean, it's to any target, so you can do creature, you can do planeswalker, you can do player. I think it has some good versatility behind it. Joyra, Weatherlight Captain, is good there. 2 a blue and a red, 3/3 human. Legendary Human Artificer. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you draw a card. So you cast an artifact, you get to replace it by drawing a card. You cast a legendary, you draw a card. You cast a saga, which I don't think that there's probably any sagas in here, but it's like most of the stuff in here is an artifact. So, you know, you're probably going to be drawing in each card, a card a turn if you've got Joyra out there. Wake the Past, 5 red and a white for a sorcery. Return all artifact cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. Okay, that's pretty good there. Just a mass revival for all artifacts. And it looks like Lorehold is this red and white there. Hey, I think that's pretty darn good there. Just a mass revive of all of your artifacts. I'll certainly take that. Astral Cornucopia, X. Artifact, it enters with X charge counters on it. You can tap it to choose a color. You add 1 mana of that color for each charge counter on this artifact. There, again, being able to proliferate a ton to get this out there. You could potentially just put this out for 0 to be like, it's out there for 0, it doesn't have any charge counters on it, but then you can put charge counters on this with other things and then start proliferating. Or you just play it for 3 and you get the 1 charge counter on there, and then you start proliferating it up really, really far to get a whole bunch of it on it there. I mean, I think that it's a pretty good addition. I know that it was kind of a bulk rare in the Theros sets because it really didn't do anything there. But, I mean, if you're focusing on charge counters, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Crystalline Crawler, we've seen this a little bit recently for me because I just opened up some mystery boosters boxes that will probably be videos later down the road there. But I ended up getting a couple of these here. But I'll still go over it here. It, you know, enters with a +1/+1 on it for each color of mana spent on it. You can remove a +1/+1 on it to add 1 mana of any color. You can tap it to put a +1/+1 on it there. But if you're proliferating there, you know, you could proliferate a ton, put a bunch of stuff on here, and then it's just like, oh, well, now I've got a bunch of +1/+1 counters on this. I'll remove them to add some more mana there. I mean, seems like a pretty good trade-off there. Darksteel Reactor, 4 for an artifact that's indestructible. Makes sense since it's Darksteel. Beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on it, and then when this has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. Oh, so they just put an alternate win condition in this where it's just like, yeah, I proliferated a ton, and I just win. Okay. Empowered Auto Generator, 4 for an artifact that enters tapped. And you can tap this to put a charge counter on it to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of charge counters on this artifact there. Okay, so kind of similar to that Astral Cornucopia, except, you know, you have a way of just adding more onto it there. So, you know, I guess you could think of it as more of an upgraded version to it. Astral Cornucopia, you could potentially put more on it initially, but that just automatically puts some on it anyway. So if you've got a way to put extra stuff on it there where you double the number of counters when something gets put onto it there, I mean, it's a little bit better. Hanger Backwalker, double X, you know, this is always a very, very good card there. 0/0, artifact creature construct. It enters with X +1/+1s on it. When it dies, you create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying for each 1/1 on it there. And for 1 and tap, you put a +1/+1 on it there. You can make it very, very big and then do whatever you want with the extra counters on it there. Lux Artillery, 4 for an artifact. When you cast an artifact creature, it gains Sunburst there, so you don't need to do it on just your next one there. But I guess if you have this out in the other one and you use it to tap it to gain mana and then give that other thing Sunburst, you could give it double Sunburst. That's funny. At the beginning of your end step, if there are 30 or more counters among artifacts and creatures you control, this artifact deals 10 damage to each opponent. So it's just, okay, you know, you've just generated a whole bunch of counters and you just have 30 out there. They could be charge counters, they could be +1/+1s, they could be any sort of counters. Then you just are like, okay, 10 damage to everybody. That hurts. Lux Cannon, 4 for an artifact. Tap to put a charge counter on this. Tap it to remove 3 from it and destroy target permanent. Okay, so just a removal spell. With all the proliferation that you're probably doing, you'll probably be gaining 3 or more charge counters a turn, and you're just like, okay, yeah, you know, this is just a free removal spell because it's target permanent. You could hit lands. You could hit enchantments. You could hit anything that's a permanent there. It's a good removal for all of this here. Steel Overseer, put a +1/+1 in each artifact creature you control. You know, getting a whole bunch of extra stuff there is always good. Threefold Thunderhulk enters with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever this enters or attacks, you create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. Which, I mean, if you've got something like Steel Overseer, or you're just proliferating, you're putting extra counters on it there, then it's like, oh, well, you're getting more gnomes. You can pay 2, sack another artifact to put a +1/+1 on this creature there. I mean, there's ways to, again, proliferate and get a whole bunch of extra mana, so you can sacrifice some of those golems to make this really powerful, so then you get more golems. Titan Forge, 3 mana for an artifact, 3 in tap, put a charge counter on it there. Not really that worthwhile there. As long as you can get a charge counter on it there, just start proliferating. Tap, remove 3 charge counters from this to create a 9/9 colorless golem artifact creature token. Yeah, you know, just be like, oh, I proliferated a whole bunch there. I'm going to just tap this, remove the 3, get a 9/9, and just do that every turn. Okay, into some of our lands at our waste. You know, white and blue. We got blue and red. Clifftop Retreat, red and white. Exotic Orchard is anything an opponent controls. So if your opponent controls other stuff, this could help out with that Sunburst of adding extra colors for your Sunburst if you really, really wanted to. But mostly, you know, it's just hoping that your opponent has one of your colors so that you can tap it for that there. Glacier Fortress, white and blue, irrigated farmland, white and blue cycle land. Karn's Bastion is a proliferation land, so very good, you know, 4 to proliferate, you know, putting a bunch of 1/1 counters or charge counters on stuff, always good. Mycosynth Gardens, add 1 mana, you can put in mana, tap it to get 1 extra mana. Land becomes a copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X there. So you could potentially have like a really, really good... Now, I think it's supposed to imply that it remains a land there. But, you know, I'd have to look up the wording on that there. But, you know, potentially becoming a copy of any target non-token artifact there to be able to get a whole bunch of extra stuff. You know, benefits off of that there is nice. Rugged Prairie, red and white. Shivan Reef, blue and red. Skycloud Expanse, white and blue. Spire of Industry, you can do it to make any color that you want for some life. Blue and red for Sulphur Falls. White and blue for a scry land, blue and red for scry land, and red and white for scry land. Good old classic Swords to Plowshares to aid with a little bit of removal there. Tezzeret's Gambit, drawing cards and proliferating, you know, good stuff for this deck here. Thirst for Knowledge, drawing some extra cards. Arcane Signet is just kind of your generic, you know, adding the extra mana. Pentad Prism, it's got Sunburst, remove a charge counter from it to add 1 mana, and I mean, it doesn't say it once per turn, so you could potentially get a whole bunch of ones on there to remove if you proliferated. Good old Soul Ring, you know, is in everything there. It looks a little bit... It's not grand like other Soul Rings are, so I don't imagine this to be a popular Soul Ring there. I could see it being popular, but I don't see this one being popular since of the design. Command Tower, add 1 of any color. Dispatch, tap a target creature. If you control 3 or more artifacts, you exile it. So exiling it for 1 white seems similar to Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares there. It's just they don't get a benefit just as long as you have 3 artifacts. It's very nice. Theorem Sculptor, make artifacts cost less. That's good. Experimental Augury, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library, proliferate. So it's essentially like choose one of the next 3 cards that you want to draw, and then you proliferate. It's more proliferation, though, that's good. Thrumming Bird, whenever it deals combat damage, you proliferate. So another really good one there. I really like this artwork on it there. Makes it look really cool. Enthusiastic Mechanaut there. Artifacts you control cost 1 less. That's always nice. Core Tapper, can tap to put a charge counter on it there. Sack it to put 2 charge counters on a target artifact there. Oh, put a charge counter on target artifact, not on this artifact. Oh, yeah, I mean, just putting extra charge counters on stuff, always nice. Etched Oracle comes in with the Sunburst, and you can remove +1/+1s on it to have target player draw 3. Well, because you're going to be, you know, putting a lot of proliferating a bunch of stuff, you can be removing the extra +1/+1s on this there to be drawing 3 cards. That's always nice. Everflowing Chalice, helping to add extra colorless mana based off of charge counters, and of course, proliferating those is nice. Golem Foundry, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you put a charge counter on this, remove 3 to create a 3/3 golem. I mean, because you can do it multiple times in a turn, you know, that's nice, but I mean, I'd rather, you know, give up 3 charge counters for a 9/9. Mindless Automaton enters with 2 +1/+1s on it. You can discard a card to put a +1/+1 on it, but you don't really need to. It's mostly just the remove 2 to draw a card. Again, you're proliferating a whole bunch there, so you're getting a whole bunch back. Soul Guide Lantern, exile a card from a graveyard there, a little bit of graveyard hosing. Sack it to exile each opponent's graveyard. Better graveyard hosing there. You can sack it to draw a card, but it's the graveyard hosing that you want. Okay, so they do have the artifact lands in here. Ancient Den for an artifact land. Buried Ruin, bring back an artifact card. Evolving Wilds. I mean, sure, get your basic land. It's an easy replace in there. Great Furnace for another artifact land. Lonely Sandbar can replace that one as well. Mystic Monastery for your triple colors there. I mean, you could keep this one in. You can also get the what would you call it there? I think it's one of the triomes that has the triple on it there. Not the I don't think it's one of the Capenna ones. I think it's a triome. So, you know, you could replace this with that one there, or, you know, I guess you could, it enters the battlefield tapped anyway, so I guess you could just have another one there. Okay, so they do have the Modern Horizons double lands in here. The white-blue one, the red-white one, the blue artifact land, replaceable, steep, the blue-red artifact land, and then your basics there. You know, you want to keep some basics in here, but it'd be nice to have some of those there. And then, you know, some of the ones that you're going to be playing there, and a bunch of counters. 5 +1/+1s on there. They want to make sure that you've got, because they know, like, you're going to be putting a whole lot on there. So, all in all, I think it's a nice little deck there, because, hey, you know, it really focuses on the artifacts in it there, the charge counters, the +1/+1s there. It's very straightforward with what it's doing, and, you know, it gives a lot of bonuses for doing those there. I think it's a very nice deck. I wasn't expecting it to be as interesting as it was, so I might give it a try. But of the two, this is the one that I'm most interested in, this World Shaper deck that deals with sacking lands. And we do know that because we saw one of the commanders in it, the Hearth Hull, show up before. There it is on the very front. And we'll just put these things that we don't need back. Hello, please fit back in. Okay. All right, so we got our Hearthful spaceship and our quick little collector booster there. And we are going to be getting here our fill-in card. Ooh, I did not get this one when I was opening up, so I'm glad to get it here. Thrumming Hive Pool. 6 colorless mana for an artifact with affinity for slivers. So it goes in your sliver deck. Slivers you control have double strike and haste there. So if you're playing in a sliver deck, there's a good chance that you're playing this for 0. At the beginning of your upkeep, you create 2 1/1 colorless sliver creature tokens that just benefit off of all of your stuff. And because they got haste, they can just instantly go in. Oh, this is going to be great for a sliver deck. And then a Seed Ship Agrarian there, which whenever this becomes tapped, you get a lander token, and whenever you put a land in, it gets a +1/+1 on it there. So, potential, replacement for something in here, if you might want to, that, it becomes tapped for whatever reason, you want to crew a spacecraft there, or, you attack in with it, you tap it down for something else, and you get a lander, which can help you bring out the basics from your deck there. That's a nice deal there. Do a little bit of mana thinning, or land thinning. Doesn't look like it wants to be friendly with this one. Oh, there it goes. Alrighty. So we're going to be going into Hearth Hull now. Now we'd seen this one before. 1, a black, a red, and a green for not a 6/7. It's a legendary artifact spacecraft that has station, and at 2+, it gains the ability of 1 and tap to sack a land. You draw 2 cards, and then you can play an additional land this turn. That's very nice. And then when it gets 8+, it becomes a 6/7 creature with flying, vigilance, and haste. And whenever you sack a land, each opponent loses 2 life. Now, you're going to be sacking a lot of lands in this deck, so each opponent is going to be losing a whole lot of stuff there. So I very much want to make a deck based off of this here, and I want to potentially make, put this card into other Jund decks that deal with this sort of thing. So I'm glad that I got an extra one there. It might be nice to get some more of it there. And then we're going to have the other commander that's going to go really well with it. Zarel, Genesis Shepherd, 2, a black, a red, and a green for a 2/5 legendary insect druid with flying. You may play land cards from your graveyard. That is why this goes so well together with Hearth Hulls, because you essentially have a, I keep on Crucible of Worlds. That's what it is. This is a creature that has Crucible of Worlds text on it there that you could have in your command zone. You could have it in your 99. It is very, very good there, especially if you're sacking a bunch of lands and you're playing extra lands there. Then it's like, oh, I sacked this land. I'll play it again from my graveyard there. And you can, tap the land, sack it, and then play the land again there untapped, so you get extra stuff. It's nice. Whenever you sacrifice another non-token permanent during your turn, you put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to Zarel's power on up to 1 other target creature. So whenever you sack one of those lands that you are inevitably going to be sacking there, you also make something a little bit bigger. Now, I mean, granted, you might want to make this guy a little bit bigger so you do distribute out more of those counters there. But, I mean, in and of itself, just for me, just having the Crucible of Worlds text on here makes this guy playable. I want to play him there. Oop. Umidian Waste Waker. 2 double black for a 4/4 insect cleric. With whenever this creature attacks you and defending player each discard a card or sack a permanent, you draw a card for each land card put into a graveyard this way. Okay, so you can discard a land from your hand. You can sack one of your lands there to make sure you draw a card there. You know, seems pretty good there. And Encore, you can exile it from your graveyard. And then for each opponent, you play a token copy of it. It gets sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step there. However, just being able to put out there and potentially be like, yeah, you know, I played the Encore cost and now I'm potentially drawing a bunch of cards because you sacrificed a bunch of your lands that are just inevitably going to be coming back is pretty nice. We got one of these guys before, a Vendo Brush Razor, 2 and a red, 2/2 Insect Warrior. Whenever you sack a non-token permanent, exile top card of your library. During your turn, as long as you've sacrificed a non-token permanent this turn, you may play cards exiled with this card there. So, yeah, you sacrificed your land that's inevitably going to be coming back. Well, you can also play stuff, you know, off the top of your deck. And also, you can tap this to sack a land to add 2 red mana. So it's like, okay, you know, it doesn't say untapped land, so you can tap the land for mana and then sack it with this to add 2 red. So now you've got at least 3 mana that you then exile top card of your library, and you're like, okay, yep, you know, I'll be able to play that again there. So, you know, very, very nice to go along with this deck here. Planetary Annihilation, I believe we had gotten this one as well. 3 and double red sorcery. Each player chooses 6 lands they control and sacks the rest. It deals 6 damage to each creature there. Very good. Very, very good. You know, 6 damage can wipe a good amount of creatures off the boards, especially depending on the type of decks that you're going up against there. And hosing people that have ramped is good. Now, you might be saying like, oh, well, I'm a green deck. I'm ramping. Doesn't matter if the lands are in your graveyard. You're going to be bringing them back anyway. So very, very good to try to limit what people have, especially if they've popped off early. Baloth Prime, we've gotten this one before, 3 and a green. It's a 10/10 beast. That's a pretty good rate, right? It enters tapped with 6 stun counters on it. Not as great. But whenever you sacrifice a land, you create a tapped 4/4 green beast creature token and untap this creature. So essentially it's like, okay, you know, you sacrifice a land and you birth another Baloth there. And then you untap it, which just essentially means you take off a stun counter on it there. You can pay 4 to sack a land to gain 2 life. It gives you an outlet to try to be able to get it there, but you're going to be having other outlets to be able to get that for a better rate. So you're probably not going to be using it for that. But, you know, just a free 10/10 that can potentially make extra 4/4s based off of the lands that you sack, that you're going to be doing a whole lot of that. That's pretty nice. Exploration Brood Chip, we got this one as well. 1 green for an artifact spacecraft with station. At 3+, you can play additional lands on your turn. Very, very good, especially if you have Crucible of Worlds or the other guy here, this Zero, playing them from your graveyard. And at 8+ charge counters, it becomes a 4/4 flyer with once during each of your turns, you may cast a permanent from your graveyard by sacking a land in addition to paying its other costs. And, you know, you can sacrifice one of the lands that you tapped there. And again, you're playing them from your graveyard anyway. So just being able to play stuff from your graveyard is a nice effect in and of itself. They don't get a finality counter. So even if they go back to your graveyard there, or if they get destroyed, because it's only permanents, it's not instant or sorceries there. So, you know, but planeswalker, creature, artifact, enchantment, battle, you know, there's plenty of stuff that you can get with this back. So that's a pretty nice one, especially since it's only 1 green to play. Horizon Explorer, we got multiple of these, and I am very glad that we did, because 2 and a green for a 2/4 Insect Scout with lands you control enter untapped. So you can put in a bunch of lands that say like, oh, you know, this enters tapped, and it's like, well, I've got this guy out there, and maybe something like Amulet of Vigor just to make sure that you get more of a chance of doing it. But it's just along those lines of, okay, well, all of the good lands that you have enter untapped, and whenever you attack a player, you create a lander token. So you just get the ability to look for more of your basic lands. It's a very powerful card there, and I think that it would be targeted for destruction a whole lot. Scouring Swarm, 1 a black and a green for a 1/1 insect with flying. With whenever you sack a land, you create a tap token that's a copy of this creature. If there are 7 or more lands in your graveyard, you create a tap token that's a copy of this creature if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Otherwise, you just create a tapped 1/1 black insect creature token with flying. So if you've got this out there, you might want to try to keep a bunch of lands in there so that you get this guy and then you just get continuously more and more because it's exponential there. It's just a thought there because, hey, you're sacking a bunch of lands anyway. That's pretty nice. Numidian Hatchery, we've gotten this one before as well. Land, tap to pay a life to add a black, and you add a hatchling counter on it there, and then when this gets put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you get a 1/1 black insect creature token with flying for each hatchling counter on this. Now, big thing is that you can continuously replay it. The only problem that I see with it is that it's the pay 1 life to do all of this here, and I think that's just, it's not worthwhile for it there, just because it's not immediately impactful. I guess you can choose whenever it does its thing there, but unless there's a little bit of life gain to kind of help offset that, I personally would not want to do it there. I understand life is a resource there, but if you've got other things that are taking away your life potentially, it might be a bit difficult. Festering Thicket, your cycling swamp forest that we had seen kind of the equivalent in the other one, and then Vernal Fen, which we had gotten before, which is another one of those swamp forests that enters untapped if you have 2 or more basic lands, which is always nice. And we're going into our reprints, and we're starting off with a Fabled Passage there. That's a pretty good one there, reprint from Eldraine there. It's a land that you can tap it, to sack it, to search your land for a basic land, and put it on the battlefield tapped. And then if you control 4 or more lands, you untap that land. So you have the potential of searching up for, a basic that enters untapped there. And this enters untapped as well, so you could potentially be searching for whatever basic that you need to play it. Getting a little bit of Braids Arisen Nightmare there, 1 in double black, 3/3 legendary Nightmare. Beginning of your end step, you may sack an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent of their choice that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, they lose 2 life and you draw a card. Okay, well, that's very good there with your yes, I'm going to sacrifice one of the lands that I have a million of. And unless you sacrifice a land, you take 2 damage and I get to draw a card. Yeah, I think you're going to be drawing a lot of cards with this here. God Eternal Bond 2, 3 double black, 5/6 legendary zombie god. Meneth, enter, sack any number of other permanents, and then you draw that many cards. When it dies or is put in exile, you may put it into the owner's library 3rd from the top. Okay, sack a few of your lands that you want in your graveyard to potentially play or whatnot there to draw some extra cards. That's nice. Blasphemous Act, deal 13 to each creature, cost 1 less for each creature. Good old red board wipe. Hammer of Perforos there. Creatures you control have haste. You can sacrifice lands to create 3/3 Colorless Golem artifact creature tokens. If I was going to be playing this deck as is, I'd probably remove this here. I'm sure that there's other better ways to do this. The haste is nice, but 3 mana to sack a land is not exactly what I want. And you can only do it once a turn because of the tap. Morag, Fury of Akom, very, very good one here. 4 double red, 6/6 legendary Minotaur warrior. For each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. Big thing is landfall. Whenever a land you control ETBs, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, you untap all creatures you control. So you go in and you attack there with all of your stuff there as normal, and then you play one of your lands, and you get to attack again, and they get +1/+0. Then after that combat ends, and you go to your next main phase there, then you play your other land there, and you can just keep on doing this again and again and again and again, and it's so good there. It's so good in this deck. Augur of Autumn, 1 double green, 2/3 human druid. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You can play lands from the top of your library. That's good. As long as there are 3 or more creatures with different powers, you can cast creatures as well. You know, that's a nifty one there. Centaur Vinecrasher, 3 and a green, 1/1 plant Centaur, trample. Enters with a number of +1/+1 equal to the number of lands in all graveyards. Whenever a land is put in a graveyard from anywhere, you may pay double green. If you do, return this from your graveyard to your hand. A little bit of recursion and being able to play it again there. That's nice. Formless Genesis, 2 and a green. Kindred Sorcery Shapeshifter with Changeling. Create an XX colorless Shapeshifter creature token with Changeling Death Touch, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. It's got Retrace there. May cast it from your graveyard by discarding a land in addition to paying its other costs there. That's pretty nice there, potentially getting a whole bunch of extra large guys there. Loamcrafter Fawn, 2 and a green, 3/3 Satyr Druid. When it ETBs, you can discard 1 or more lands. When you do, return up to that many target non-land permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. It's just to your hand, so it's not the best, but you do get lands in your graveyard for brings that stuff back. Multani, yep, 4 double green, 0/0 legendary creature. Elemental Avatar, reach trample, gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land in your graveyard. And you can pay 1 and a green, return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand to return this from your graveyard to your hand. A little bit of recursion there. And you can play them again. Oracle of Moldiah, play extra lands on each of your turns there. Play with the top card of your library reveal. Can play lands from the top there. That's good. Pest Infestation, destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments. Create twice X, 1/1 black and green pests. When this token dies, you gain a life there. So, I mean, you're getting a whole bunch of stuff out there, but just being able to get rid of a bunch of artifacts and enchantments is really good. Rampaging Baloths is a decent one with the landfall there. Not entirely sure if I would keep this one in here. 6/6 trample. When it's got landfall, whenever land you control ETBs, you get the 4/4 green beast creature token. Splendid Reclamation. Return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Well, if you've got that Horizon Explorer, they enter untapped. Tireless Tracker. Landfall Investigate. Sack a clue. It gets +1/+1, but you know, it's just, you know, you get the clue to potentially get extra draws. Return target land to the battlefield. Whenever a land is put in a graveyard, you get a 5/3, and you're going to be doing that a whole bunch. Yeah, that's pretty good. World Breaker. When it's cast, exile target artifact, enchantment, or land. So, you know, a little bit of targeted removal there. Reach. Can pay some mana, sack a land to return this from the graveyard to your hand. So, you know, you can continuously try to play this a whole bunch there to, you know, remove more stuff. Escape into the Wilds, play an additional land this turn there. Get to exile top cards of your library, and you can play those until your next turn. Gaze of Granite, destroying a whole bunch of non-land permanents there. I mean, if you've got a lot of extra mana, you know, some targeted removal. Gitrog Monster is a very, very good one in this. If it wasn't in here, I would have put it in there. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice Gitrog unless you sack a land. You can play additional lands. Whenever 1 or more lands is put in your graveyard, you draw a card there. So you're going to be doing that a whole lot anyway, so that's very good. Corvold enters or attacks. You sack another permanent. Whenever you sack a permanent, you put a +1/+1 and draw a card there. You're sacking a bunch of permanents anyway, so it's going to be getting a lot of +1/+1s, and you're drawing a bunch of cards there. So, and you know, when it enters or attacks, you can get it triggered off. Mazarek Crawl Death Priest. Whenever a player sacrifices a non-permanent, you put a +1/+1 on each creature you control, so you make your whole board wide. You make your whole board big. Omnath Locus of Rage. Put a land in, you get a 5/5 green elemental creature token, and whenever Omnath or another elemental dies, it deals 3 damage to any target there. So, you know, you're putting a bunch of lands in to get a bunch of those elementals. Soul of One Grace, I mean, Lord Windgrace is one that I potentially put in here as well, but Soul of Windgrace there, 1, a black, a red, and a green. For a 5/4 legendary cat avatar, whenever this attacks or enters, you may put a land from a graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under your control. You can pay different mana to discard lands to either gain 3, draw a card, or make this indestructible until end of turn there. Not the most impactful there. You know, it's nice to be able to bring back lands with that there, because whenever it attacks there, you get it. So that's always nice. Windgrace's Judgment, for any number of opponents, destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. So, you know, you're destroying 3 things. As long as they're not a land, that's good. World Swirl's Rage deals X damage to any target, and you put X land cards from your hand and or graveyard onto the battlefield tap, so you can get a bunch of landfall triggers all at once there. That's nice. Some extra lands there, a cycling black-red land, green-red land, green-red land, black-green land, red-green tapped land, black-red land, black-red land, black-green land, black-green land, Farseek to help ramp a little bit here. Springbloom Druid, when it ETBs, can sacrifice a land. If you do, search for 2 basic lands, put them on a battlefield tapped. Okay, you know, that's nice there. Get some into the graveyard, ramp a little bit with it. Binding of the Old Gods, 2, a black and a green. Destroy target non-land permanent opponent controls, so target removal. Then you get a forest, and then on the very last turn, creatures you control gain Death Touch. Not too fond of this. I'd probably replace this one in the deck there. Arcane Signet for your normal stuff there. The Soul Ring, Command Tower to tap for any color there. Search for Mountain or Forest there. Terramorphic Expanse, it's search for a basic land. Infernal Grasp, destroy target creature. Night Whispers, draw some extra cards. Sprouting Goblin there. 1 and a red, 2/2 Goblin Druid with kicker green. When it ETBs, if it was kicked, search your library for a land with a basic land type. Reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. Now the thing is, it just says search for a land with a basic land type. That means you can get another land that's a non-basic as long as it has a basic land type. So as long as it says mountain, forest, swamp on it there. So that's pretty good. And red and tap to sack a land, draw a card. It's not the most amazing card, but I'd probably keep this in here there of being like, okay, you know, I got the extra land and I'm sacrificing a land to draw an extra card each turn. That's nice. Aftermath Analyst, mill cards. Sack the creature to return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Bringing a whole bunch of stuff back is good. Beast Within, get rid of a nasty permanent. Cultivate, a little mana ramp. Groundskeeper, return lands from your graveyard to your hand, so you're able to do the discarding lands there, or, you know, do landfall if you want to. Harrow, a little bit of mana ramp. Nature's Lore, another ramp spell. Roiling Regrowth, sack a land, search a library for 2 basic land types, put them on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Depending on how many basic lands you keep in this deck here, this might be something to be replaced there, because, I mean, if you don't have as much basic lands, it's not going to be quite as good. Say to Wayfinder there, reveal top cards of your library, take a land, and then the rest go to the graveyard. Sky Shroud Claim, get a little bit of mana ramp. Tear Asunder, a little bit of targeted removal. Jury Master of the Review, whenever you sack a permanent, you put a +1/+1 on her, and then when she dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target there. So you're sacrificing a bunch of lands, and when she dies, deal a whole bunch. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, this deals 1 damage to any target. Sacking a bunch of lands, you know, deal a little bit of damage there. Targeted removal for Putrefy. Rakdos Charm. It can be targeted removal there for an artifact, or you can graveyard hose by exiling a player's graveyard. Urg, Spawn of Turg. 2 black and a green for a star 5, Frog Beasts. Power is equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard. Beginning of upkeep, you surveil 1, you can sack a land. I'm not entirely fond of this one here. I'd replace this one in the deck. Bojuka Bog, you know, that one's always good in a black deck to exile a player's graveyard. Cabaretti Courtyard to be able to get one of your basics there, though. This is forest, mountain, and plain. So, I mean, you're getting a forest or mountain there. Doesn't get the green. Deck more salvage there to potentially use the dredge ability to get more stuff into your graveyard is nice for this type of deck. Escape tunnel, sacrifices to search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, sacrifice this land, target creature with power 2 or less gets unblockable this turn there. I mean, could potentially be playing it over and over again, so that's nice. Evolving Wilds, get to search for a basic land, that's nice. Maestro's Theater lets you get your swamp and mountain there. The island, can't really use it on that one there. Myriad Landscape, you can sacrifice it for 2 basic lands. Riveter's Outlook, look for this is the one that you actually want, the swamp, mountain, and forest there to get all of them there. Rocky Tar Pit lets you search for stuff, and then you've got a wastes and then some basic lands as well. There's a lot of lands in here that are the search ones that they're very good there, don't get me wrong, but having too many that search for just basic lands, I think, is not going to be the play. I think that you do want to have some of them, and obviously because you can recur them, it's nice there, but you probably want to upgrade some of those. And then you get your stuff there. These look like Baloth Prime beasts there, elementals and pests and whatnot there, insects, copies. So all in all, I'm really excited with this, really excited for this deck. There's definitely some upgrades that I would make to it to make it a little bit more, not cohesive, but just to power it up a little bit more. I don't think you need to put a ton of stuff in here to make it much more playable. Obviously not going to be CDH, but I don't play CDH. But, you know, overall, I'm glad with these 2 decks. While I am more excited to play this one, I am a bit surprised at how much that I enjoyed just the idea of the bunch of charge counter stuff. So all in all, I think that even though that there's only 2 of these decks, they're pretty darn good, and I'm glad to have gotten both of them there, and I have the potential of wanting to build upon both of them there. So very, very nice. Thanks for coming in to look at this little Commander deck review for each of them here. I'm looking forward to playing them. I hope that you are going to be doing something fun today when you watch this. Please take care of yourself there. Until next time, have a wonderful day, evening, night, whatever it is that you're having, and I'll see you later.